What is up, guys? It is the Sports Star Bradley Walker, and welcome to the Walker Report. Happy Thursday to you guys. If you noticed, I did change the banner at the bottom of the screen there, so I have made some changes. We'll be talking all sports on the show as we do. We are part of the following networks: NGSC Sportscast. Remember the website; it's ngscsports.com for all your sports content. We're part of the Game Winner Sports Network, Snowman Multimedia Sports, Mancini Media, and the Sports Alliance of America Incorporated. Welcome in, guys. Like I said, happy Thursday. We have two outstanding sponsors. The first one is CreatingZenSpaces.com. It is the local choice in St. Petersburg, Florida for house cleaning, organization, decluttering, and pet sitting. It's about finding the peace within you and adding comfort to your life. And guys, remember, Zen Spaces begins with you. Be kind to yourself and one another. We are also sponsored by Fun-Wags.com. Born from a near tragedy, a Fun Wags mascot had a bad reaction from a store-brand treat, but we make our own treats from 3 to 5 ingredients you can pronounce. Head over to Fun-Wags.com because the Fun Wags mascots want you to try it out. Because at the end of the day, guys, our fur babies deserve the best. Head over to Fun-Wags.com to try out those treats. Again, guys, I want to apologize. We were in the midst of a show last week. And, there was an internet issue. It has been resolved. But it was an accidental thing. But that has been fixed. And we are back here today. We will have Jeff Barnes again on this evening to talk NFL draft, which we were in the middle of that last week when the internet went down. But anyway, guys, welcome in. And let me bring on, before I bring Jeff on, my three esteemed great co-hosts. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
How's it going, guys?
Going good.
Yeah, goes.
I like the change. I like it.
Good?
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
All right. Well, what's up?
I just noticed it.
What's that?
The banner across the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
I made some adjustments to it. So, yeah. But kind of the same thing. I didn't change much. Just added some new things. Got grammatically correct, as everything now has to be grammatically correct. But how's everyone? Everyone doing good? Everyone all right?
Yeah.
Feeling better? Doing good?
Yes,
how's
much
the wife?
better.
Good. I'm good to hear. But how's the wife, G-Dub?
She's not doing too good right now, but she's holding her own.
That's good. Good. All right. Well, hey, that's good. That's good news.
I can see if she's doing any good. Hang on. I'm going to throw the old battle axe in the doghouse. Throw it in the doghouse. Yeah.
You see him bury you under that doghouse.
I'm telling you right now, one of these nights we're going to be witnessing a murder live on a podcast. There's going to be a live murder on a podcast.
His screen's just going to go black.
Yeah, there you go.
His screen, she's going to reach over and turn the camera off.
It's only murders in the building.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
right.
We are experiencing technical difficulties.
Oh, she said she's just gonna hang me from the ceiling fan.
Oh wow, that's.
I know I'm almost
that's not good either. Going around in circles.
Going around in circles and cut the rope. You know how they used to do it on these cartoons, how they would spin them around and cut the rope like from Fly. That's what she would do to me.
Yeah,
He'd be up there holding himself, trying to cut it off with a butter knife.
Oh boy. And that's gonna be a live pay-per-view event coming soon.
If you guys,
It'll cost you
if you guys get a
$119.
chance,
That's our exclusive OnlyFans content.
There you go.
Head over to the Walker Report Facebook page. There was a show that I was on last week. Let me know how I did. It is a different podcast. My friend Scott is the one who runs the network and the show. And there's a lot of professionals on that show. So let me know how I did. He said I did well, but let me know how I how I did against all the other 3 guests that he had on that show. So head on over
Where
there
we
if you
find-
guys get it. Yeah. Huh?
Where will we find it?
Go to the Walker Report Facebook group page. It's on there. It's on there, Luke.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay.
I posted it on there. There's a YouTube
And
link
if
that
you
you
want
can
to
go
see-
to and take a look.
If you want to see Gerald get murdered, just go to www.com. Gerald Gets Murdered.
.org. That's a government website. That's .org.
Yeah.
Right.
.org. .gov. .gov.
That's just federally funded project.
I've got to find that stupid one.
Dark web. Dark web. We're gonna go to the
Dark web.
Oh,
But let me
Where
go
all the
ahead
really
and
super
bring-
secret stuff starts.
Right. Let me bring Jeff on. Hey, Jeff, you're gonna be witness to a murder live on the podcast. We got to make sure that we get all our
Absolutely.
everything's in line.
Welcome to the clown show.
I think she's smart enough not to leave any evidence.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right. See? That's a smart
now
that's a smart woman right there.
Before you
Yes,
know it, you're going to
yes.
see there's a black screen and just there. What?
Please excuse us. We're experiencing technical difficulties right now.
Plug the internet before she did.
Yes.
We'll be back after these messages.
Okay.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did free agency start?
Not
Or
yet. Not yet. It doesn't start till
Not
after the
yet.
new league year. Yeah.
Right.
So you're talking March.
Okay.
A few more weeks. Yeah.
March 8th, I think.
The tag period started,
Yeah.
or starts next.
yes,
Yeah. You're gonna get into the tag period, and once the last date for the tag expires, then you're gonna have the end of the league year, the start of the new league year, which opens up the books for next year. So that's when teams really start to realize the money that they got and how much they're ready to spend.
Yeah.
Or don't have.
Yeah, they haven't even announced the salary cap number yet because they're still
Oh.
digging through the financials from this year.
You think it'll be north of 200?
Oh, definitely will. It's just a matter of how high above 2 they go.
I got a question for you there, Jeff. And I know Lou's going to want to know this too.
Yes.
Who do you think the Cowboys and the Jets should tag?
Well, I don't know if Dallas has to tag anybody this year. Last year was Tony Pollard, and it made sense. What he would have gotten anyway is what the tag price would have been. They're already working on a CD Lamb deal. They're working on extending Dak. I think the main thing with Dallas is the Dak deal sets the framework for everything else. It sets up how much CD Lamb gets and eventually how much Micah Parsons gets. So they have time with Micah, but they got to get CD done now before that becomes something they got to worry about.
Yes.
I've heard that Dak deal is going to be north of 60.
And it's the market, unfortunately, right? We talk about with the Bucks, Baker Mayfield getting at least 40. Well, Dak Prescott's a guy who's won 12 games and had 12 win seasons in a row, 3 of them in a row, taking his team to the playoffs, a couple of division titles in the last couple of years alone, not counting the whole stretch of his career. Plus, the last deal got him up to about upper 40s. So he's not going to stay for the same rate. He's going to go higher. They're going to want to. Stephen Jones is going to want to try and keep it as low as possible. But if I know Jerry wants to get this done so he can set up the rest of those guys getting paid, and he wants to move forward.
I wouldn't give Dak no more than 50.
It's not in the cards.
50, I think, is reasonable.
I know that saying is going to be around 60, but I think when you look at it, it's probably going to be around 50s, mid 50s probably. I know they're trying to push for 60. You never really get the number you push for unless you're Deshaun Watson. Even Lamar tried that. I want the same deal that Deshaun got. He didn't get it. He got a lot of guaranteed money, but he didn't get what Deshaun Watson got. So I think when you look at it, there's always a negotiation tactic by the player. There's also one by the team. In this case, Dak has all the leverage. Where he could not sign anything. He can play out this deal, and it was still beneficial to him. But it benefits the Cowboys to get his money down for this year. In order to do that, they have to extend him. So he has all the cards right now. So they're going to play a game of chicken until the league year starts. But at the end of the day, they got to get this kind of done before you get to that point. Because, like I said, CeeDee Lamb is the big albatross after that.
Unless they're out on Dak, unless they're. Do you see them moving on?
No.
Do you see them targeting a quarterback in the draft in the midpoint, somewhere in 3 or 4?
Jerry Jones already said he wants to win. He wants to win now. He's not going to win now with a rookie, and there's no veteran he's going to bring in that's going to play at the same level right now. So I think what you're going to look at is they're going to do what they got to do to keep Dak Prescott. They're going to try and they're going to try and improve that defense so it doesn't give up 40-something points in the playoffs again. And they're going to do things like that. They're trying to help him out. They're going to realize this window that they're in right now is only going to last for so long. So you got to do everything you got to do to try to win with this team now.
But
the question.
Go ahead, Adam.
The question is Dak? Yeah, because like you said, he holds all the cards. And does he take they don't. He doesn't have to sign a contract. He's still under contract. He can wait another year. And if he has another year if he has another banner year like he did last year, he could approach well north of 60. We're talking 65, 70 if he waits. Do you see him winning?
Yes. While it would be a great gamble, he's already bet on himself several times with the contracts. I think he's going to take what he gets at this point because at the end of the day, the one thing missing besides the biggest deal out there is the ring. And
right.
Yeah, if he goes out there and gets the ring, when it comes time to either renegotiate again or just to plain and simple, get the people off his back. I think that's one of the biggest things right now is to get everybody off his back. Go get the ring. You're going to get the money, whether it's high 50s or low 60s. So I think the money is not the hugest thing for him right now. The main thing is right now, and you kind of see it. He's worried about he's got the daughter coming, so that's one of the things he's looking at. But the main thing is he wants to win with this team, and he wants to do it before it gets to the point where they're ready to move on. And I know a lot of people saying Trey Lance is in the fold, but we haven't seen Trey Lance improve yet because Trey Lance really wasn't given that opportunity in San Francisco. He's learning now. So that's not an option for the Dallas Cowboys. None of the quarterbacks they draft are going to immediately make them better than they are with Dak Prescott. So there's a lot of things they got to fix. And if you make the quarterback a bigger issue than it is right now by saying, okay, we can move on from him and go in another direction, you're not going to fix the other things you need to fix to get better so you can win. So they have to fix the defense. That's first and foremost. They know they need linebacker help desperately. There are guys on that defensive line they're probably not bringing back. There are probably guys within other parts of that defense and even certain parts of the offensive line that may not be back. They still need another tackle because they know Tyron Smith, who is technically a free agent, is at the end of his career. He only has but so many years left in his body. We've seen the breakdowns year after year. So they have a lot to fix in one off season. So the last thing they need to worry about is Dak Prescott. I think they need the cap space. They can restructure other guys to clear up some smaller space. But the biggest hit is going to be able to the biggest help for that cap is going to be able to do Dak's deal now, clear a lot of space so you can get CeeDee Lamb done, and then work on other guys, and possibly even bring in some free agent help.
Now, here's another question for you, Jeff. After Dak retires, okay, who do you see coming in and replacing Dak? Do you think it could be Trey Lance, or do you think they would draft a quarterback?
That's gonna play out as the whole Trey Lance situation plays out. If they see enough development out of Trey Lance, they may not draft anybody. Remember, Trey Lance came out very young, so he's going to have plenty of years.
He did.
So if they see the development in Trey Lance, they believe by the time they're ready to move on from Dak, or Dak decides to hang up his cleat, they'll probably go to Trey Lance direction if they believe in what they're seeing. If they don't be surprised if they break somebody in before Dak is gone. I mean, the last thing that they want to do is go through what they went through with Troy Aikman, where they had no plan and no situation. It's one of the things Jerry's railed against since he's gotten his team back to winning is I have to have a plan at quarterback, which is why Dak Prescott was there, because they had no plan when Tony Romo went down in 2015. So they're really at the situation where they want to have somebody they believe in that can at least be a quality starter in-house without having to go and break your neck to move up in the draft to get somebody and give up your future.
Merging the farm for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're looking 4 or 5 years. I can't imagine them giving him anything less than 4 years.
Yeah, because you want to extend, but you also want to stretch it out, right? We don't want to have this money eating up the books year after year for the next 5 years. You want to be able to stretch some of this money out. So I look at the area of 5-6 years. He signed a 4-year deal. He knew he was going to re-up again soon. So this time I think they'll get him to the longer 5 or 6 year deal. He'll get the money he's looking for. They're able to stretch it out, be able to sign CeeDee Lamb. Next year they'll be able to re-sign Micah Parsons, recruit that core together. And then you're going to start to see guys coming in and out. Eventually, DeMarcus Lawrence is going to age out. He won't be a Cowboy anymore. Eventually, Zach Martin's going to age out. He won't be a Cowboy anymore. Right now, we don't even know if they're bringing Tyler Biadasz back in the middle of that offensive line. So there are a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces with this offseason for the Dallas Cowboys. It starts at the top with Dak Prescott and his money.
Now, I do think Zimmer can help that defense.
He can. I think the one thing with Mike Zimmer is that he's going to be a hard-nosed coach. He's always been tough. He's always been a guy that's going to try and get the best out of you through the same means that like a Bill Parcells does. They push you and push you and push you to try to motivate you, as opposed to earning your trust in a different manner like the Wade Phillips is. And you hear a lot about Dan Quinn where he say he's very friendly to his player, very friendly, player-friendly. Yeah, he can be that way. Sometimes that gets the best out of some guys. Some guys, it allows you to middle off because, coach, I know coach has got my back. Sometimes you have to have a coach that's going to look at you and go, listen, if you ain't going to get it done, I'm going to get you somebody else, no matter how good I think you are, no matter how much you're getting paid. I got to have results on the field and not just in certain games. I need it all the time. So I think what you're seeing from this defense is he's going to bring a little bit of that old school mentality that they had at one point when Jimmy Johnson was there. Even at points when Chan Gailey was there. Chan Gailey wasn't – a lot of people say he's player-friendly. When you look at Chan Gailey, he wasn't, right? He conflicted with Michael Irvin. He conflicted with Troy Aikman. He was pretty tough. He just wasn't tough as far as being able to get that team to fight through some of the adversity that they had. But I think Zimmer brings that kind of edge back to that defense. I think he brings accountability to more of a level that we've seen. But I also think he brings a realism that I have to have this toughness that we didn't have. We were very finesse before. We were all about speed and mixing up combinations. And when they lost Van Der Esch, they lost one of their best linebackers. And granted, you didn't have the talent to replace them. But what you saw was
never do
playing the linebacker position. And these are guys who are not run tough, right? Safeties can be tough hitters. But when you're standing 5 yards off the ball and a lineman is coming at you, you tend to get pushed around because you're not used to taking that guy on when you're at 12 to 15 yards deep. So there's a different level of toughness that we saw last year in that defense that Mike Zimmer's not going to allow. He's not going to do that. If he has to bring an old linebacker off the street to come in and play, he's going to do that as opposed to putting safeties down.
And also, Zimmer is the type of coach he will get in his player's face. He will chew on that butt.
Absolutely. I think the one concern if you're the Dallas Cowboys is you just don't want Mike Zimmer to do what Mike Zimmer has been. Mike Zimmer's usually been a very heavy zone defensive coordinator, right? He likes to run a lot of zone, and he'll run man, and he'll blitz, and he'll do all that stuff. But he was very zone heavy. And if you saw the Cowboys under Dan Quinn, when it came to zone defense, that's usually when they got gashed because they spent so much time in man. Those guys weren't used to covering space and covering the route, so they lost a lot of people in zone. So I think that's what you got to worry about is, okay, if we're going to add more elements of zone, what's he going to do to help this defense that at times struggled in zone coverage?
Well, that's where you gotta.
Go ahead, Adam.
That's where personnel comes in.
Right.
You gotta adjust your personnel, to fit the scheme.
And that's something.
And that can be in free agency and the draft.
And that's something Quinn didn't do last year. He didn't make adjustments at halftime.
Yeah, no. I think the hard part is when you're a coordinator, and I've learned this being a coordinator. If you can have a scheme, but if the pieces don't fit, you can't stick with just being that scheme and just saying, well, the guys didn't. If you want results, you got to coach what you got. So I give Dan Campbell a little credit last year for coaching what he had, but they had moves they could have made, whether it was bringing one of their guys up off the practice squad or keeping guys, some of those free agents that they brought in and looked at. They may not have been great linebackers, but they were sure enough at times better than having safeties out there trying to play linebacker. So I think at times last year they got a little too comfortable with the guys they had and said we could win with this scheme. And sometimes instead of saying we do need this because although we have talent on the field and it does have a scheme that I could use, it's not going to help us against certain teams that are going to be a lot more powerful than what we've been able to be successful against. You were able to stop the teams like the Jets from running the football on you, but you couldn't stop Green Bay. You couldn't stop Buffalo. In the first meeting, you couldn't stop Philadelphia in the second half either from running the football on you. They're a very fast, penetrating defense up front. So you need disciplined linebackers that are going to be able to read the gaps and fill. When you're using safeties, that's a problem. So I expect them to make a commitment at linebacker in free agency in the draft. I think they're not going to spend huge money on a linebacker. I expect them to spend at least a mid-market linebacker, bring a mid-market linebacker in, somebody on a 2-year deal that's affordable. But then what they'll do is they'll draft more of these young linebackers that they see. The question is, where do you get that big linebacker? See, the one good thing about Van Der Esch was he was that big linebacker, that big 6'4", 245, 250-pound linebacker. They don't have that without Van Der Esch. So you need that because that's the guy that's going to be able to hold up at the point of attack. You just need guys that are smart enough to read gaps. So I think that's what they're looking at right now is in this draft class, who are the smarter players? Not just athletic, but smart.
I would put Sweat from Texas in there as a smart player.
Absolutely, and he's going to be an excellent one technique somewhere. A very powerful player, one mode, right? He's not going to beat you with a lot of different moves. It's straight on power that wins for him. So he's definitely a one technique that's going to absorb a lot of double teams. And while they had that at times with in their defense, once again, when you have a 3 technique that over penetrates, he has to fly into the backfield to make plays. He doesn't make a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage. He has to penetrate into the backfield to get tackles for a loss. That leaves a big space behind him for that linebacker to fill, and that's it. That's what kind of killed them at times. They would get penetration from Micah Parsons off the edge. They would get penetration for DeMarcus Lawrence off the edge, or they would get penetration up the middle. And what happens is if they got past that penetration, there was no linebacker there. So that was one of the biggest problems they have. Or if they over penetrated and opened up a cutback lane and they went against some of those shiftier runners, that's what hurt them in the running game as well. So they have to have guys that are going to be able to be disciplined enough and run fits to understand that I'm going to fill my gap, but I also have to slide back for cutback. If I'm the backside backer, I can't get blocked where when they do cut back, I'm not going to support my other linebacker. And so that's where they kind of fell apart last year. Safeties don't do that very well when you play them in the box. So they have to have disciplined linebackers that are smart and physical.
I wonder if they go get Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Josh Allen would be a good fit for that scheme. Like I said, I don't know if all those guys up front come back. But I would look in this draft class at guys. I think that's where they're going to really make the big difference. The kid from Texas is going to make a big difference somewhere on somebody's defense. We were talking about a bunch of them last night. I think that's one of the things. Even if you brought in a guy like a J.D. Bertrand, or as much as I don't think he's a great middle linebacker, Eichenberg, there's another guy that fits in mid-round picks that, day 2, day 3, early day 3 guys that are going to come in and they fill that role in your defense. Those are the kind of guys that I think they're going to be targeting more than, going after the big name guys that fit up front, because I think up front they're okay. If you cycle through the depth guys that rotate in, I think that'll be fine. But you got to fill it's behind that section behind that, the linebacker level. They've got to get more stout there because you're only playing with 2 linebackers most of the time anyway.
If he's available in the 3rd or 4th round, I like Michael Barrett. I really take a long, hard look at Michael Barrett. A 6-year guy, high motor guy, plays sideline to sideline, run coverage, can fall back, has good hands for a linebacker, big. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", mid 220s if I remember right. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but that would be a guy that if he was available in the 3rd or 4th round, I would jump all over him.
Yeah, and the thing with him is, that's about the range you're going to see him, right? That late day 2, early day 3. And the reason is, one, he's a little light, right? When we talk about it, 220s, maybe 230. So he's a little light. So, 10-1, he's going to be an outside, not a Mike. But the main thing with him is, you said the first thing, he's a 6-year guy, right? So most teams look at that and go, he's an older guy. We're really going to get the best of him for 1 contract. So they're not going to draft him pretty high because of that. The age thing is a real big thing in the NFL right now, especially with the analytics crowd, because they want to project a lot of productivity out of a player. And if you're coming in with a shorter window, you get pushed down the draft board. So that's one of the things with him that he's going to get looked at. They're going to say, okay, 6-year guy, they're going to look at age. If you're coming in at 25, you'll be 26 during your rookie year. You're not a guy that's going to get highly drafted usually because they don't expect much production out of you past that first contract.
And GMs want to win the media just as much as anybody else. And so if you kind of go get him in the mid 2nd round or even late 2nd round, you're gonna have the Merrill Hodges and the rest of the talking heads saying you're reaching. And it doesn't matter how much you like a guy or how much you think he fits your scheme or how much you were impressed by him at the combo or in meetings or GMs don't want to hear the noise any more than the coaches or the players. And the draft is the Super Bowl for the GM. Mm-hmm. And winning on draft day is just as important as winning on Sunday. And so when you're looking at it, and that's the one thing I don't envy about being a GM, is because I was thinking about that earlier. If you're drafting at 5, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because the guy that got taken at 4 and the guy that got taken at 6 are going to both be future Hall of Famers, 6-time Super Bowl champions, or the guy that gets drafted at the bottom in the 6th round that becomes the next Tom Brady. And then everybody's like, well, how'd you miss him? And you're 5 years into a rebuild, and you're 9-8, and everybody's calling for your head, and it's just a miserable life. I just can't imagine what kind of.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about the draft. I think that's one of the special things about the NFL draft, because they've found a way to make 7 rounds matter, as opposed to some of the other sports where once you get past the first half of the first round, you really lose interest, right? You don't expect those guys to make a difference. So,
no.
But the main thing is you got to trust your boy. You spent X amount of time evaluating the guys. You sent people all over the country to evaluate these guys. If you believe in what you put on that board and the grades you put up there and the projections that you have for these guys, then you have to do what's best for the squad. So if you're looking at it, you're at pick 5, and if you're drafting for need at 5, it better be a home run. Because realistically, at the 5th pick of the draft, you still have some of the best talent on the board. So if I'm drafting at 5 and I know that I have a great number 1 wide receiver and my quarterback is young, but he's improving and I believe in him, and I have a pretty solid offensive line, and the best pick on the board is Marvin Harrison Jr., well, guess what? We're getting a good number 2 right now because I'm going to improve my team as fast as I can. And one of the ways I do that is stockpiling excellent talent. He's a generational player. And even though I may be set at wide receiver, there's nothing wrong with adding a generational talent to that room. So I think sometimes people look at it and go, why do you take another receiver when you already have one? Well, if he's a generational player and he's better than everybody else on my board, I'm taking him because somehow, some way, that generational player is going to make an impact on my team. So there's times where they have to believe in that. There's times where if they over-evaluate a position. It happens. That's the one part about it is we're never perfect in evaluations. At times we can be wrong. So, but you'd rather fail up than fail down, right? You'd rather go in there and pick somebody who's generational and he makes an impact on your team and your team doesn't get much better, as opposed to you taking a guy because you really need an offensive tackle and you take him at 5, which is rich for the position that you drafted him, and he comes in and struggles. He doesn't make your team better. You don't get any better as a team, and then all of a sudden you and the coach are being fired because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You didn't improve this team. You took a player who wasn't the best player on your board. It didn't work out for your team, and now that team is now hiring somebody else to fix what you couldn't.
And of course, the 2 guys that were picked after that guy are perennial Pro Bowlers and future Hall of Famers because that's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a Patriot.
Could be.
I think the Patriots trade out of 3. I really do. I think they trade down.
That would definitely be a Belichick move, trading back. That would be so built. But I don't know. I'm interested to see what Wolf does. This is, of course, their new GM is Ron Wolf's son, the late Ron Wolf, GM of the Packers.
Oh yeah.
So he's bringing in a lot of his Green Bay connections. He brought in Alonzo Highsmith. It's a Green Bay connection. So we're going to see how that goes. They were usually pretty good at picking the best talent available when his father was in Green Bay. So I'm really intrigued to see what they do there. It may be a totally drastic change from how the Patriots have drafted the last 20 years with Bill Belichick at the helm, because they may actually be going best player available and sticking with the pick as opposed to trading back a million times. I mean, granted, Bill, when most of the time he was there, was drafted in the back end of the first round anyway, so it wasn't a huge jump. But when you're top 5 in the draft, I think you tend to stick around for those picks because there's a lot of talent on the board when you're picking it.
Yeah, at 3, there's only 2 guys that have gone ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the question will be, do they go with the generational wide receiver or do they really want to replace the quarterbacks? I don't know if they're ready to move on from those quarterbacks just yet, if they believe they can add talent. While he may have worn out his welcome with Bill Belichick's not there. Or do they make a move in free agency?
Right.
That changes their whole draft board. If they go in there and that changes their whole draft board, their whole draft outlook.
Absolutely.
So that's a whole nother scenario right there. They have the ability to move around in the draft before you even get into the draft, just by making a couple of signings that take certain needs away. That you feel, okay, now we can definitely go base player available at those positions because find the talent that's going to come in and help us right away.
If they go out and sign a halfway decent quarterback, then it makes Marvin Harrison really intriguing at 3 if he's still available.
Absolutely. And I think there'll be some decent quarterbacks on the market that they could definitely do something with. Now, it may just be a competition thing and bring in, instead of getting, sticking with the young quarterbacks fighting it out, they bring in one veteran to compete with the young quarterbacks that are there, and then they definitely add to Marvin Harrison, and then maybe they come back in the second round with another young quarterback. So there's so many ways to go with it if you're New England. I think there's a lot of needs. I think first thing is, yes, you take the best player available in the top 5 first, but you still have to look at that offensive line. That offensive line can get a lot better. That defensive line can definitely help you out a lot more. I think they're pretty solid in the secondary, so they don't have to go crazy there. With linebacker, you definitely can get a little stronger on the defensive front, and definitely on the offensive line, you can definitely improve.
And you also have a first-year head coach there too, and so do you? Because I think Mayo's got a lot of he's earned 3 to 5 years there in New England with being such a fan favorite, being a young guy. I don't see this being a one and done, 2 and done kind of thing. I think he'll get a fairly decent shape there in New England, and so if you're drafting for the future, I don't hate the Marvin Harrison pick. I think it's a high value pick, because then next year, because I don't like this quarterback class. I'm very down on this quarterback class. I don't think that I think that everybody needs a year or two to be NFL ready. Yes. Unless you're in I don't think there's any win now scenarios that it doesn't have a quarterback. Maybe Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's the only team in a win now scenario without a quarterback. But everybody else that's going to win now has a quarterback. And then everybody that's close is 2 or 3 pieces away, and not just a quarterback away. And so I think you draft Marvin Harrison this year, and next year you look at the quarterback class, because I think New England's going to be a 4-13, 5-12 kind of team, drafting in the top 5 again next year. And with that, moving up to 1 isn't necessarily out of the cards. You move up to 1, trade up for 1, and draft the quarterback next year.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this quarterback class has some immediate players. I don't know if they're going to be to the level of C.J. Stroud. I think that whole situation in Houston came together very quickly, but they weren't a very poor team talent-wise last year. Things were going wrong for them, but I think that they were able to add in a lot of young talent that made sense. They have a very good coach who came in with the right direction, and they were able to turn things around fast. I think if you look at the teams at the top of the board, Chicago being one, and I've said this a million times so far this all season. I know there's a lot of talk about trading Justin Fields and doing all this stuff. If I know that Matt Eberflus has 1 year to prove himself, why am I bringing in a rookie for him to prove himself with a rookie? It doesn't make any sense. I might as well just fired him this offseason. So, to me, if they make that move and they do trade Justin Fields, it doesn't make any sense to me to keep Matt Eberflus. Then you basically damned him, because unless that rookie comes in and the defense turns around, because the defense blew a lot of those games for them as well. Unless that rookie comes in and absolutely is lights out, you're going to have struggles again, and you're going to have the calls for his job. So I think the main thing is, once you brought back Matt Eberflus, that meant Justin Fields and him were tied at the hip. They're going to pass. They're going to succeed together, or they're going to fail together. Okay, and I don't think it would be the right move to do that. Now, there are a lot of people that say, "Oh, you got to look." I'm a lame duck head coach. The last thing I want is a rookie quarterback that's not ready. So I think that's the one situation there where a lot of people are looking at the top of the board and going, and they're coming up with different scenarios. I'm not sure if Ryan Poles is ready to move off of that because of that scenario. Now, he may do it. He may, at the end of the day, say it's the best thing for the Chicago Bears is to go out there and get a younger quarterback because this rebuild is going to take longer, that's fine. But you should. That's the case. Should have gotten rid of the head coach because now you're wasting a year of this rookie's career that you just brought in.
So
Go ahead.
So you're thinking that they're gonna. So then, who do you take it one then? Do you trade out of it then?
If I'm Chicago, I'm hoping that I'm going to sit there. I'm going to say I'm open for offers, but I'm making myself very available at a lot of top 5 pro days because I want to draw as much interest for that pick as possible. If I'm willing to sell and I'm letting everybody know sell and I'm ready to bail, people aren't going to come to me with the kind of offer I want, the bailout one. I want somebody desperate to offer me a lot at 1. So I'm going to stand in there and I'm going to show that I'm willing to make a pick at 1 where people are going to make me an outrageous offer. The more you look like you're seriously drafting somebody at 1, the more and more you're going to get a serious offer that's going to get somebody to say, well, you can pick 1, but we'll give you an unbelievable package for 1. Right, so I think that's got to be the card that he plays. If he's saying I'm open, I'm willing to trade out of 1, and he's showing a lot of interest in trading, people are going to give him offers, but it's not going to be anything near the package you would get if people had to desperately make you an offer. Desperation makes the the hardest decisions easy, right? So when teams that are really saying we really need to get the 1 because we really need that quarterback. We can't have anybody jumping in front of us. Offer whatever we can get to get the 1. That only happens when you're desperate. And so you got to make a team desperate enough to do that. And if you're sitting there saying, I'm willing to trade, the only way they get really, really desperate is a million trade partners. There are going to be a million trade partners for 1. Some of the teams that are willing to trade are going to be in the top 5 with you. So they're not going to have to give up a ton to move up. What you have to do is bait them into it. So how you bait them? Make a serious push to show that you're willing to trade and willing to take a pick at 1. So when teams are willing to believe that you're willing to sit there at 1, they'll make you a ridiculous offer.
I'll say.
I was going to say, Jeff, should Bucs fans be worried that Baker and Mike Evans haven't been signed yet?
No,
excuse me for a minute, guys. I just had an emergency come up, so I got to go fix that. But I will be back next week.
All right, bud.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I think the hardest thing you have to worry about with that situation with Tampa Bay is how much Baker's going to get now. The longer this plays out, the price goes up. So somebody's got to get tagged in this situation. That's something you don't want to happen, especially with Baker Mayfield, because then that draws the situation into the summer. You don't have till the summer. You have a lot of big name guys that you have coming up. You want to keep some of those guys. You ain't gonna be able to keep all of them, I believe. But getting Baker's deal done earlier allows you to keep more of those guys. So if you get Baker done in the next 2 weeks, all right, that'll get you done by the end of the combine. And that'll allow when you go into the new league year the following weekend and free agency starts, you have a lot more command over retaining guys like Winfield. If you want to keep Evans, that's another one. Vita Vea is another guy. So there's a lot of these guys that are dependent on that Baker Mayfield deal. So they really need to get that done. If that's the case, then you could tag somebody you really need to tag. If you want to tag Winfield so he doesn't walk, you could do that. But then you got to get the Evans deal done. If you're willing to let Mike Evans walk, then you have to have a short list of guys that will be veteran guys you bring in to replace them. And you have to have your draft board ready to bring in more receiver help. Because if you lose Mike Evans, you lose a lot from that receiving core. So they have to, but it starts with Baker Mayfield.
I've heard, Jeff, through the grapevine here in local radio that they're going to tag Winfield. That seems to be where Jason Light and I forget who their cat guy is, what his name is, but that's where I hear that they're going to go. That they're going to tag Winfield which would make sense because, again, he's going to have to get paid. And then, of course, you have Vita Vea due for a contract. Tristan Wirfs will be due for a contract. You were just talking about you're bringing an offensive lineman. I think the Bucs took Tristan Wirfs, was it last year or the year before, or a few years ago? They took him in the first round, and he ended up turning out to be a great offensive lineman, one of the best. I think the Bucs have ever had it, maybe outside of Paul Gruber. But I mean, it's coming down now to I've been listening to local radio, and of course you get on there every day, and that's the number one question for all the fans that are calling in is these two guys haven't been signed yet. And, you know, the longer that it goes on, you know, like you said, I think the longer it goes, the worse it's going to – I shouldn't say the worse. It's going to be the more money these guys are going to demand. And like I mentioned last week about Mike Evans, I read a X post today that somebody said, well, you know, Mike has a family here in Tampa and they like it here. But on the flip side of it, he's got to get paid. And he's taken all of these team-friendly deals over the years to stay a Buccaneer.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'm not too, because free agency hasn't even started yet. I'm not too worried about those kind of deals. I would be, if we're mid-March and nothing's done, if the calendar flips over to April and nothing's done, then I start to get,
getting him signed. So, but like I said, Houston's calling. So I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. The beauty of getting it done now is the guy that you get done, you get him at your price, right? You don't have other teams setting the market for you yet. Everything about the market for these guys is hypothetical. So every once in a while you get fortunate. A guy says, you expect the market to be hotter for a guy. He hits the market. It's pretty cool. You get him at the price you want him to get. It works out in your favor. But 90% of the time, a guy hits the market. There's a team out there that's willing to pay him outrageous money. You either match it, top it, or leave. So I think they don't want to get to that point with certain guys. Winfield makes the most sense to tag because his tag isn't going to kill you. But you don't want Baker Mayfield hitting the market because there's going to be a team after the year last year willing to pay him $45 and up for a contract. Somebody's going to pay Mike Evans $25 and up for a contract. Vita Vea, somebody's going to pay him a considerable amount of money. So, because these guys are still productive players. So, you got to look at it and say, what's the best move for us? All right, tagging Winfield makes the most sense. You bring him in, the tag won't kill you. You can still sign one of these other guys if you tag Winfield. If you get a decent deal with Baker and do a couple of things on the roster with some of the other guys, people talked about cutting a Shaq Barrett. I think you restructure him. I think he's still a player who's worth something to your defense. So I think a restructure probably comes in the play for him. That'll give you some room under the cap. I think if you extend Godwin, that gives you quite a bit under the cap that you can work with, as opposed to just letting him play on the last year of his deal. Usually the last year is the most expensive. So if you can lessen some cap hits from other guys, it'll give you a little more wiggle room to get some of those other guys signed. And I think that's what they got to look at. I know Levante David is a loved player in this area, but he's an aging player who you're getting declining production from. Those are guys you don't walk and you go and draft well, or you sign a mid-level contract to replace them. And so you get a younger player that comes and plays better. So I think they got to make smart decisions. You let Sean Murphy Bunting go because you wanted to re-sign the guys you got. Well, some of those guys, if you're not comfortable with how they're playing, it may be time to move on. Take the cap hit in some situations. Jamel Dean had a less productive second half of the season than he did for the first. So he's a guy that you'd probably look at and say, can we restructure this deal? No. If you believe you have the ability to replace him right away, then he's a guy you either trade or June 1st release. So there are things they're going to have to look at and make some tough cap decisions if they want to bring a lot of these guys back.
Well, there's one thing that just dawned on me that's throwing a monkey wrench into a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Spring football.
Yeah.
There's that.
Well, spring football
That's
because what that does is that see the beautiful thing about UFL is they're not going to interfere with the NFL. If they have guys that the NFL wants, the NFL can sign them and they won't block. Right? So they'll let them come to training camp. I think that the best thing about the spring football is the guys that are being released from camps are ending up there. They're getting guys playing time in the offseason, and if they've improved enough, they get brought back to the NFL. So that's what we didn't have before.
And that's the angle that I'm taking, is that there may be guys that aren't getting deals as soon as they might otherwise have, because of the fact that we're going to have a spring league where guys that are 26 to 24 to 26 are going to get meaningful minutes in real football. Where you might have already pulled the trigger on Baker Mayfield. You might have already pulled the trigger on extending Godwin or signing or tagging Winfield. But now you're going to hold off because at the end of April you're going to have a whole another month of young guys playing a meaningful football games, and get a look at those guys, and it could have an impact on how you're thinking about how you want to move forward. Maybe you don't want to give Baker $45 million for a year for the next 3 years because you got your eye on some kid that you know is going to go play in the USFL, and you're thinking, let's see what he can do down there. And if he stinks up the joint, then we'll make a deal for Baker, because at that point we're kind of in a box, and we'll just deal with what we have. And if Baker walks, then that's fine. We have these contingency plans in place. We're looking at a guy in the draft. We're looking at this USFL kid. We're looking at other free agents that may be available.
Yes.
And we don't really value, because I personally don't value Baker at 45. I think that's way too much money. I think that's way too much money.
For 35 either.
35 is the high end of where I would be comfortable as it sits right now. I think 35 is probably market value. The market is inflated because the quarterback market's always been inflated. Especially when you look at guys like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, where those guys alone command over $1 billion. And so, of course, everybody wants, guys like Baker Mayfield is like, well, if those guys get $1 billion, then I should at least get some of that. If Burrows and Dak and Mahomes and those guys are at 50, 55, $60 million a year, then I should be at least 42, 45, 48. And I'm like, oh God, dude. You had you had 4 mediocre seasons and 2 good seasons and 1 career salvaging year.
The hard part is that the market's been set, right? So you have those elite top tier guys that are getting that ridiculous money, but you set the market when you have guys who aren't close to that getting 40. So when Kirk Cousins, what he wanted out of Minnesota, that set the market. When Daniel Jones got 40 from the Giants, that also set the market. So now you have no ceiling, but you have a floor too for starters. And if you got a Baker Mayfield who's accomplished more than those 2 guys I just mentioned, he's not going to take less than 40. So I think what you're looking at is the market's been set from ceiling to floor. So your low-level starters are going to get $40 million, unfortunately. So
It's
has led a team to a playoffs, well, two teams to the playoffs, and had some playoff success. He's going to guarantee at least 45 because based on the resume. There are guys that have been to the playoffs and haven't done it, and they've gotten $40 million. So he's basically using the market to get what he wants, and the market has shown that he can get it.
I'm not mad about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a player advocate. I'm a player advocate, but and I look at guys. I don't know because you also have to because Kirk Cousins is up. He's doing a deal in Minnesota, and Dak's. They're talking about redoing Dak, which we already talked about, and he's looking at $60 million, and Baker is in that 38 to 48 to $50 million range, and it's like, and we don't know. And the other thing, that's also holding up this process in terms of getting guys re-signed and in signing guys, as free agency hasn't started yet, and we don't know where the cap's going to be. Is it going to be 202 or 222?
Yeah, I heard 202.
And what's that? Because if it's 202 and you were in cap hell, you're still in cap hell. But if it's 222, that range of number budget crunching, in a poverty franchise, and if it's 202 and the gap from elite to poverty franchise is very, very wide. But if it's 222 or it's 215, that gap shrinks because you're able to do a lot more. You have a lot more to work with than you did today. And so I think that's the other thing that's holding up the market right now, holding up the processes, is we just don't know exactly where that money's going to end up.
Yeah, I think when there was a lot of different reports with the cap this offseason. Some people did have it going up to 220. I thought that was a little on the high side. I didn't think it was going to get that high. I figured it would be somewhere at or below 210. This was my sweet spot for the cap. Now, I don't know if it gets to that point. I know that they're still talking about it. And part of it is I know the owners don't want it to go that high. Because
yeah, of course not.
It just enables more and more guys to ask for bigger deals, which just realistically they just don't want to be paying a bunch of players a lot of extra money. So what I see though is once the market is set for these players, the agents aren't dumb, so they know exactly how much money they want to get for their player. They know what and they're purposely putting that stuff out there. While Dak may not want 60, his agent is saying 60 because he wants him to get as high as he can on this last big deal. So they're gonna put a lot of numbers out there. Somewhere the meeting point is in the middle. So you're hoping it's in the middle. If the market's very cool for you, if you're an unrestricted free agent, that number, that middle point gets lower and lower, unfortunately. So that's what they're hoping to rail against. They're hoping there's a lot of money. They're hoping that there are teams out there wheeling and dealing and free spending because they have a lot of cap space. And they're hoping that's what drives the market up for their clients. So there are a lot of agents eagerly anticipating that cap number because it's going to at least tell you a lot of these teams that are supposedly in cap hell won't have to make as many cuts to free up space. And the teams that have a lot of space right now are going to have extra space, which means they're willing to spend even more. So they're looking at the cap situation going, how much can I get my client? How much can I get these teams to spend? Then the teams are looking at the cap space and saying, how much should we have? What do we have to lose in order to get under? And how much can we bring in without going too far? Because at some point when you do sign these guys, next year's guys come up and then next year's guys come up. And at some point, you're going to lose two guys for that big deal that you signed. So they have to get to the point where they're looking at the rosters. There's ownership's looking at it going, okay, who can't we afford to lose in the next 2 years if we resign this guy? Because somebody's going to walk. It's just how it is. You can no longer pay everybody. So at some point, you're going to lose somebody. So they're at the point where they're signing people with the intention of looking at other guys saying, we'll sign him at that as long as it allows us to re-sign such and such at a later date. because they do want to keep as much of a nucleus together on a lot of these teams.
Well, it's negotiation. When you want a cat, you don't ask your mom for a cat. You ask for a pony.
Yeah.
It's a classic. Dak's people, they may be at 57 or 56. That may be the number that they're comfortable with. But you don't go and say, we want 56. You go out and you say, we want north of 60. Because then Dallas goes, oh my God, they want $60 million when they were at 52 or nothing. And now they're like, oh, all right, we'll come up to 55. And then Dak's people go 59. And they come up to 57 or 56 and a half, and they're like, okay, deal.
With Dak,
you never.
With Dak, I'm not sure the sticking point in his deal is going to be the amount. I think that Steven is going to fight him on the amount. Eventually, Jerry will, if he has to step in, he'll step in. I think the sticking point is going to be the amount of guaranteed money. That has become the biggest fight with a lot of players now. Is to get because teams are, you want 50, we'll give you 50. That don't mean we actually pay you 50, but we will.
Yeah.
So the guaranteed money is the biggest thing because the guaranteed money is the thing that hurts you the most. All right, once you guarantee money on a contract, the only way you can recoup it or recover from it is if the player retires early or if he gives you a cause to release them and you can recoup some of the funds. But
like vehicular homicide.
Once you sign a guaranteed deal, it's an albatross. If things don't go your way. Look at Cleveland right now. They went out there and they made the playoffs with Joe Flacco. Everybody goes, Joe, why don't you make Joe Flacco your starter? Because we guaranteed $200-something million to this guy, and nobody's going to take that deal off your hands. So you can't trade him. Plus, he has a no-trade clause. I believe in that as well. And the fact of the matter is you can't release him because then that accelerates $200 million against your cap. So you're going to be eating $68 million for the next couple of years, whether you like it or not. So go ahead. Let him play quarterback for you. It is what it is at this point. You made the deal. You're gonna have to eat it, and that's what's gonna happen with Cleveland. People, whether they like Deshaun Watson or not, whether they think he's worth the money or not, it's a fully guaranteed deal. They gotta pay it, and it's hard to let $70 million sit on your cap each year. And if you try to release the guy, then take 70 whatever years of $70 million that are on that cap and accelerate it into one. If you really try and make it a June 1st cut, then you accelerate it over 2 years. Either way, there's a lot of cap space gone for one guy. I don't think any team does that. I think he plays it out, and they're going to do whatever they got to do to win with Deshaun Watson as long as he's on that deal.
Or you end up with another Bobby Bonilla situation where you're paying him $1.2 million every June 1st for the next 250 years.
Yeah, but unfortunately in football with the hard cap, they can't pull that kind of stuff. That baseball's ain't pulling off. There's no accuracy. You are paying that money on the cap whether this year and next year. But there's no way out of it. And that's why owners are very hesitant to do the fully guaranteed deals to quarterbacks.
Right.
That's why it was hard for Lamar Jackson to get the deal that he got because he wanted the fully guaranteed deal, and every team said no. There were plenty of teams that would love to have Lamar Jackson, but once he said fully guaranteed, people were out because nobody wanted Deshaun Watson to get that deal.
And then you end up with a situation where if you fully guarantee somebody, $333 million over the next 6 years, and he plays mediocre at best, and it's not because he's hurt, and it's just and you guarantee because you're looking at because what did Mahomes get? 565 or something like that, 560.
Yeah, but he signed
for 10
long. Yeah, he signed a long deal. Most of these guys aren't getting those deals. They're getting $5-6 million deals. Some of it is their agent. Their agent wants them to re-up in a couple of years and get them a bigger deal. So they're taking the shorter deals. That's what happened with Dak Prescott. That's what happened with a bunch of guys. Their agent a couple of years back said, let's pause on the long deal. Let's sign a $4 or 5 year deal, get money now, and come back and get more money in a couple of years. So that's the game that they're playing is let's max out on these deals before you get to the point where you are no longer able to command that kind of money. So it puts more money in the player's pocket, it puts more money in the agent's pocket, and makes all of them happy. So it just so happens that's that one-off deal. Watson got his fully guaranteed deal, and as much as the quarterback would love it, you're not going to see it. But as much as they can, if they can get at least half that contract, if they're signing a 4-year, what are some of these deals now? The $200 million, something like that. So if you're signing a 4-year, $200 million deal, that's $50 million a year. You get 100 and something of that guaranteed. You're $100 million richer. You're getting $100-something million no matter what, unless you go out there and commit an egregious crime. You're going to be paid $100-something million, and if you fulfill that contract, you'll have the full $200+ million. So there are more benefits for the players to go out there and get as much of that guaranteed as possible. Take the short deal, come back again and get more of it. So they're coming back for seconds. So that's the main thing now. Mahomes, I think that's a one-off. He was comfortable in Kansas City. He doesn't want to leave. He's been there long enough. Family's settled there. I don't think he wants to leave Kansas City. And even his deal doesn't have as much guaranteed in it. But he's got security in the fact that he is a big part of the organization. Everything flows through him. He's not going anywhere. If he sees all 10 years of that, it's going to be great. But I think he's going to see at least 7 or 8 of it. And they'll probably want to renegotiate before that.
And if at year 8 of that deal, he's got 6 or 7 or 8 rings, and he can be mayor of, he can be God in Kansas City. He can run for God and get it.
Mm-hmm.
That contract is going to be. I don't know what that contract's going to look like. It's going to be insane.
Yeah.
Because I think that deal runs like through 2032. I think is when it expires. 2033, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But we could be talking about 2 years, $500 million a year, and there are countries that don't have $500 million a year. there are entire countries that GDP is smaller than $500 million a year. Not a lot of them, but
you're talking You're talking Ohtani money at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not talking Ohtani money because Ohtani his deal is like 13 years. These numbers are the human mind can't wrap itself around $500 million a year for one guy.
True.
Yes.
Well, and didn't Ohtani take a deal where he isn't gonna take as much cap hit for the Dodgers so they could sign more people? I think that's what I
Yeah, he's only getting like $1 million a year right now. Like it's all backloaded. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like 1.2 a year, and then the rest is like stock options or some stuff like that. It's bizarre. It's why he has good lawyers.
The way the baseball agreements are done is it's almost like monopoly money because they find ways to pay people that most leagues can't do. The NFL is very in how you can pay a player. So you don't get. First of all, NFL owners are never going to give you ownership of anything as a player. So that's never going to happen. But there's certain things that they're able to get away with. Now, you could backload a deal in the NFL, but most of the time it doesn't work out for the player, because you don't always see that big money. So It's a little better for baseball players to do it because you're most likely going to have a longer career. But
right.
but it doesn't make sense. NFL players tend to want the opposite. They want the money early and guaranteed, where if anything happens at the back end of the deal, they're not taking as big a hit. So they love the front loaded deals, and not many of them get it, but it works out to their advantage in that situation. I just there are certain positions where they're just not paying as much as you would think that they would, and it's working out to their advantage. We look at the amount of tight ends in the league that are quality tight ends. They're not getting paid anything what the receivers are getting.
Right.
The money's not there anymore. If you're an edge rusher, you're one of the highest paid defenders. If you're a cornerback, you may be up there as well. Other than that, safeties aren't getting big money, as we're seeing with Winfield. He's probably going to get capped. He's going to probably get tagged because it's affordable. It's an affordable tag. So,
right.
Part of the equation is certain positions slotted to make more. They're a lot more expensive in free agency. They're a lot more expensive to retain. So I think that's another thing that plays into the advantage of the owners when it comes to what they're doing in the offseason is if you could find ways to retain guys for less and maintain a decent amount of cap space, it works out longer for you in the long run. If you can do that with a quarterback. So while I say Mayfield is probably going to command in the mid to upper 40s, I don't know how much of that's going to be guaranteed. So that's the part that is going to be a fight for them. Maybe they get him to take 44 and they guarantee a little bit more. Or they give him 48 with a little less of a guarantee because he's only had a short amount of success with them. So I think that's where these contracts are going to play out. It's up to Chris Light to make that work. But then what happens with Mike Evans? Do you give him a front-loaded deal so you can get out of the deal in 2 to 3 years if you do so?
Yeah.
Because he's going to want as many guarantees as possible in his contract.
Right.
So Vita Vea is another one. You give him a front-loaded deal in case he falls off in a couple of years. So I think they have to look at this and go, where are we right now? What's the best course of action? What are we projecting for this player over the next 3 to 5 years? If we project a major fall off, we give him a shorter deal, or we front load the deal and make it easier to get out of in 2 to 3 years. That's where they're at. So you got to make it to the point where it works best for you, but you still got to reward the player.
No, I agree with that. I think it's time for Mike to get paid. Whether that's in Tampa or that's somewhere else. So yeah.
And the other thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But like you were saying, is that everyone, this stuff doesn't happen in a bubble, though. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And there are, we may be talking about 2024, but there are guys that are going to be, teams that, let's say you're Baker Mayfield, and you want 44, or you want 48, but next year is going to be just as hot and just as competitive. Maybe you take 38.
Yeah.
And because Jared Goff's coming up next year, and maybe you get your eye on the strike job. And that's the thing that I always say when we do this stuff is like we're not in the meetings on Monday. We don't have any inside information or anything, and we're not in the heads of the players or the GMs with it. The owners and the owners. Yeah, everybody talks about how the owners don't want to pay anybody anything. And to a certain extent, that's true. But any owner, I think that it's something that the owners have got to realize is that if you want to make money, you got to spend money, and not having a guy like do we get Baker back for a year at 44, or do we let him walk and then sign Mason Rudolph because he's cheaper? We can get Mason Rudolph at 22
Yeah.
and be 9-8 because he's just as good. And it's all those things that go into what you're looking to do because because they really want to re-sign Mike Evans because he's a fan favorite. He's a Tampa Bay guy, and he's the one they want, right?
Right.
And they're more willing to let Baker walk because they think they can go out and get a Mason Rudolph. And I'm not saying that Mason Rudolph is the guy they want, but it's just for an example. Or they like somebody in the draft. They think that J.J. McCarthy's going to fall in their lap. He's going to be there in the mid-first round. We like him. We think we can plug. We think he's a plug-and-play guy. We can put him in, and we can make with all the other pieces we can keep around him. We think we can be just as competitive with a young guy as we are with Baker Mayfield. And so they let Mayfield walk. And then everybody goes, why'd you let him walk? And it's because we have a plan. And then like you were saying earlier, it's like if you're wrong, you're done.
Yeah.
You're watching somebody else clean up your mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's your mess.
And there's also plans, right? So you resign Mayfield, you can't come to terms with Evans. Well, you still have Godwin, you still have some of the other receivers you have. In this draft, who says you don't end up with a Brendan Rice in a combination of a Brendan Rice, and later in the draft you come back and get a guy like McCaffrey, or you get Brendan Rice, or you get a Doomsday from Texas, or from Washington, excuse me. Two top quality receivers. So there are guys that you may get in this draft in combination that can probably combine to give you that production of a Mike Evans as opposed to having one guy give you all that production. So there are ways, if they're smart enough, to look at it and say, do we have to sign Mike Evans for $25+ million? With this receiver class, we can bring in two guys that can help our receiving core replace that production. Now, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes the gamble doesn't work out. But if you look at this draft class, just looking at names, I mentioned Rice. Like I said, we mentioned Harrison. I don't expect Harrison to go past 10. I don't expect him to go past 5 to be exact. But but when you talk about first-round guys and second-round guys, there's a lot of talent in this class between Rice, between I know Legette's a guy I see on day 2 that a lot of people like. McConkey is a guy I see day 2, early day 3. A guy that a lot of people like. Excellent Senior Bowl. Malachi Corley is another guy who I think is going to be a nice mid-rounder. Is going to be a highly productive player. Roman Wilson's another one from Michigan. A lot of people love him in the slot.
Yes, sir.
So
he's a great slot guy.
Yeah, so you got a lot of talent in this draft where you could put together a combination of guys that can come in and replace production of some highly paid receivers that are leaving. Now, are they going to give you the kind of explosive plays individually that Mike Evans gave you? No. But they may open it up for other guys like Godwin to create some of those plays. So that's where you got to look at it and say, does that help? I think there's the same thing with tight ends. You got Cade Otton, you got another young tight end, and Parham. But I think what you have is some guys in this class who are going to be excellent tight ends, and I think give you more explosiveness than what Otton gives you. For a prime example, the kid out of Penn State, Theo. Sorry, I'm forgetting his last name right now. So he's one of those guys I think that comes out and gives you the ability to stretch the field. He's a big body player, solid. Theo Johnson, that's what I'm thinking of. Solid blocker, willing blocker. So he gives you more explosiveness than what you get out of Otton and Park. So I think you look at guys like that; they bring extra things to the table that help your passing game out. And so I think when you look at that, if you're going to be able to look at that and say, do we sign this guy, or do we look at what's in the draft and say, can we replace some of that production with it at a cheaper cost and re-sign some of those other guys? That may be the plan for certain players.
I mean, and also too, even though I think Mike is he's a fan favorite here, Jeff, you made a good point. You got to get younger. And I mean, sometimes that's what happens. You got to get rid of the guys. And you were talking earlier about Lavonte David. I think if they don't bring him back, I have a funny feeling he retires. I really do. I think Lavonte's like Mike. They've been here through the dark days when the team couldn't win a game. When they were the laughing class of the, they've been here through the tough years. And I've heard interviews with Lavonte David, and that's what he said. He said, if it comes down to it and I have to sign somewhere else, or if the writing is on the wall that this is it for me, he steps away. And he'll be in the Ring of Honor. I mean, he'll be in the Ring of Honor for the Bucs. Honestly, I think the next person that needs to be in the Ring of Honor, and I'm shocked still isn't, is Gerald McCoy. I'm shocked that McCoy is not there. I got to sit down and listen to an interview that he did on 620, the station I listen to every day going to work. And he said that he made a comment. He said, if I get inducted, I'll be crying while I'm on the phone. I'll be crying on the plane trip to Tampa, and I'll be crying during my speech. I will say that if he goes in, I'm going to try to go to that game. I mean, he was the guy that was supposed to replace Warren Sapp. And you want to talk about two different ends of the spectrum than Gerald McCoy and Warren Sapp. Sapp was a bad apple on and off the field as many people. I don't know Warren personally, so I can't say or agree with that. I don't know him personally. But Gerald McCoy was the complete opposite. He was the nice guy, the guy that was in the community helping out in charity and all that stuff. And Warren was not. And I'm interested to see Warren as an assistant coach in Colorado this year with Coach Prime. I'm interested to see how he helps these kids in college. But like I said, McCoy was supposed to be like the heir apparent to Warren Sapp, and there's only one Warren Sapp. I mean, Warren was a great football player. Coming to Miami, Hurricanes coming into Tampa, and they won a Super Bowl with might have been one of the best defenses in all of football, and the Tampa 2 with Monty Kiffin. But I mean, it comes down to, like I said, McCoy. McCoy was the opposite. He was the softy, as they used to call him, in the middle, and then now you have Vita Vea. So, we'll have to see if they bring – Jeff, do you think maybe they'll tag him? Do you think there's an outside chance they tag Vita Vea to hold on to him? Or is that –
They might.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is, because we expect Devin White to walk, right? I think that situation's irreparable. They're not going to bring him back. David's situation, if they want to get younger, then you have both of those guys. So you're going to have to improve both of those positions. I think they're going to do it by getting younger. And like I said, they may bring in a veteran that'll just come in and hold the fort and teach the younger guys that are coming in. But I think it allows you to use that money from that position that you're not paying those guys to keep a Vita Vea, right? Who's not going to be this astronomical salary. So right. I think he's one of the lesser spectrum guys of that group. Like I said, Devin White is the one that I'm pretty sure that's done now. I wrote a piece about 2 months ago saying that, if you're going to keep him, you've got to first fix the situation. I don't think it's fixable. I think they agreed to get through the season together. They did it. They had a little playoff run, and then it looks like they're ready to part ways. So I think he goes free agency. He finds a new home. So that money can go to getting a Vita Vea back. I think the tag makes more sense for Winfield because it's not going to be a killer tag. Like it'll probably be in the teens, and it's something that you can live with, and it allows you to set up the framework for a deal going forward. There's probably going to be a less painful negotiation than it would be if you tried to tag a bigger player. Evans, we know about. But even with Vita Vea, even if you would tag him, it makes it easier to move on next year. But he's not an easy play to replace, but you can replace him with multiple players. So I think that's one of the things you look at in Vita Vea. Individually, he's a hard player to replace, but I think you have the ability to use multiple guys to replace his production. Winfield's a lot harder because what he does in coverage, what he does in the running game, his playmaking ability, his ability to take the football away, that's a very hard thing to replace. You know, I've been on a 3-year rant now when it comes to the Hall of Fame because I've seen for 3 straight years Darren Woodson make it to the semifinals and get passed over. And I can't figure out why when there are lesser safeties that have gone in than a guy who was kind of like what we talk about with Winfield. He brings a special cover ability. He's a physical player. He's a playmaker. He needs to take away the football. And he had the ability to cover and play at a high level at multiple positions. You have a player that's like that. We always look for a safety like that. You have Winfield who can do it. You have Buda Baker who can do it. And neither of those two guys are easily replaceable. So
Yeah.
get a player like that. If you have the ability to secure him, you secure him. So I think it makes the most sense for Winfield as opposed to doing it for a Vita Vea or even a Mike Evans.
And the other thing that I was just thinking about here is that we're like laser focused on next year, right? 2024, the 2024-25 season, right? And as fans, we don't care about the future, right? We want to win now. We want to win championships now. But as a GM and as a team, you know, you might be, you know, we'll sit here and go, why didn't we go get this guy? Why didn't we go get that guy? You know, why didn't we bring in this guy? You know, that's all well and good. But like, if Tampa Bay called Mike Evans' agent and Mike Evans' agent said thanks but no thanks, then that's it. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, right. And so they may be like already thinking about 25, 26, and like looking at the draft, looking at future free agents. Like, we're not going to waste our time with Mike Evans. We're going to let him go because he's already gone. You know, whether he retires or he goes somewhere else, we already know he's not coming back. So we're not going to waste the energy on trying to bring him back. We're already looking to the future because we know that if we franchise tag him, we got him for 1 year. If they're looking at franchise tagging Winfield, and you know, and that's it. He's back for 1 more year. Do you really want to waste a franchise tag for a guy that's not going to come back, that you're not going to get a deal done with? And so those are the things that I think that a lot of fans they get lost in all of the hoopla around free agency and the draft. Is that, you know, for us, you know, especially for me, is that I don't care about next year. I don't care about the future. I want to win today, and I want to win championships, and damn the rest. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And when you're an NFL GM, winning today is great, but if in 3 years you're 4-12 and you're fired, or 4-13 and fired, you don't get to eat anymore. You know?
No, you don't.
You know, what I like to do when I'm, you know, preparing for the draft, every offseason I go in, once we get to this point, we know who the coaching staffs are, the GMs are, I always come up with a chart. So when I'm in the draft and I'm looking at picks and I'm looking at who's making the picks, I remember how they think and who they are. This is from 2 drafts ago, and this chart is almost halfway incorrect because most of these guys are fired or retired, right? So it just goes to show how important this time of year is in how you build your team. So many of the guy names on that list, came in with a plan. Some of those guys were inherited. No matter what, they're gone. And we've come up with 1,000,001 scenarios, but their scenarios have to make sense even more than ours. There's no repercussions for what we say on the air other than somebody calling us a name on the internet. They've got to produce it. So it's the ultimate thing when we look at it and say it doesn't make any sense. And sometimes in our eyes, it doesn't. We ripped the Lions in a new one in the first round last year for drafting Jahmyr Gibbs with their first pick. Because we said, you already have that guy, that you already drafted from Georgia. Now you're replacing with another one. And he didn't fall off. It was the same kind of production that they got. So kudos to them for having the foresight to say, we got a younger, cheaper version of a running back we already have. That was their plan for that pick. Now, while we like it, it worked out for them. And there's times where we look at situations and go, why are you taking Cole Strange in the first round? Now look at where Bill Belichick is. So there's times where it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. But if they have a plan and it works out to their – I can remember a lot of people ripping Jerry Jones a new one for trading back in the first and late in the first taking Travis Frederick. What the hell are you doing? We had a third-round grade on the guy. And the guy goes on to be an all-pro center for several years. Then they haven't replaced him. They can't replace him because he was a special player that you just could not replace. So it's that kind of thing where we look at it and go, okay, well, we're assessing it. We believe this is not a great pick. And all the data shows it's not a great pick, but it turns out to be that they were right. Or the data turns out we're lauding the pick, and it never comes to fruition. I was lauding the pick of the Bears taking Justin Fields, and there are people ready to burn his jersey right now because they want to Justin Fields. But unfortunately for Justin Fields, it hasn't been the greatest situation for success for him. But you've seen the improvement of the player. You see that he can lead a franchise, but you got to be patient with the vision, and we don't know if they're patient with the vision.
Well, the one that sticks out in my mind, and this is going back almost 2 decades. It might actually be 2 decades now, but was the Lions taking Charles Rogers at 8 and passing on DeMarcus Ware, and him ending up in Dallas at 10.
Yeah,
that's one that sticks out in my mind of what were you thinking?
Thinking offense. You saw it. There was the first team to take wide receiver in the first round. Was it 3 consecutive years, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were thinking offense. They needed offense. They had some solid players at pass rush. And believe it or not, guess what? If you're a Cowboy fan and you hate Jerry Jones, you should be kissing his feet for DeMarcus Ware because
DeMarcus Ware was a stud.
He would not have been there when they went to pick again in the first round. Yeah. Had they taken Marcus Spears with the first pick, like Bill Parcells wanted.
Jones has lost it.
Yeah, Bill Parcells wanted Marcus Spears more, and he literally drew up an agreement with Jerry Jones on the spot, saying you owe me if this pick doesn't work out. Well, it worked out just fine for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it worked out great.
DeMarcus Ware had a nice, long, productive career there, and Marcus Spears had a nice career. Just wasn't all in Dallas.
And Charles Rogers broke his collarbone and was never worth anything. So.
I just think Charles Rogers, the biggest problem for him wasn't the injuries. The biggest problem was right here. He had all the talent that you wanted. He never put it together.
From the neck up.
He never had a stable situation at quarterback. That was a whole nother thing. And he was there with a bunch of guys who, honestly, they were used to losing. So,
well, and never had a stable coaching.
Yeah. But when sometimes organizations get stuck in that rut. You're used to losing. You get bad coaching in bad situations. You get players that just don't fit and it doesn't work out. Joey Harrington was highly overdrafted. But
by like 4 rounds.
They thought he was a lot better than he was, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
And it turned out for a lot of guys that way. I think Charles Rogers, when he realized that they were losing, he got used to losing, and it just never improved. Even though he had Keyshawn there with him for a while, who was trying to teach him.
Yeah. No, the whole Matt Millen era is. I could go on an hour-long rant, so I'll let it be.
Right.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot
I
of
could.
things we can rant about.
Yeah. The whole. Well, and just to finish my thought on Matt Millen is he got the gig at Fox. He's a direct guy. He got the gig at Fox after after his career ended in LA or Oakland, I forget where they were at the time. But when he finished with the Raiders, he got the gig at Fox, and he talked about the Lions. The Lions were a pretty average team in the mid to late '90s. So, 10-6, 9-7, 8-8, 9-7. And he'd go on because he was always, and the Lions were always the third tier on Fox, so he'd get a lot of Lions games.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he'd talk about how if they got this guy, if they went and did this, and if they drafted this player, they'd be great. And the Fords called him and said, "Hey, you want to come be our GM? You're super smart. It seemed like you know what you're talking about." He's like, "No, I'm just a TV guy." And they said, "How about this much money?" And he said, No, I'm good." And they said, "How about this much money?" And he said, "That much money? Okay."
How about this?
And yeah. They backed up the brakes truck for him, and they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And then they continued to pay the man.
Uh-huh.
It's one thing. It's one thing to take the deal, right? Hey, if you're gonna offer me X amount of money to do this thing, and I stink at it, and then you're gonna give me that much more, I'm gonna ride it until you fire me.
Yeah. Sure, who's going to go number one?
Yeah, the Raiders had Reggie McKenzie as their GM. It was him and Jack Del Rio together. They built a pretty quality team, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted John Gruden. Well, John Gruden comes in. John Gruden comes in and says, "I know what I want. He's already started building you a very good team. Why are you coming in rocking the boat? Well, now the ownership wants to give Gruden everything he wants, so they part ways with McKenzie. They bring in Mayock. Okay?
Yeah.
He's a draft guy. He should know. He should know when he's up there and he doesn't have to deal with the weight of the decisions, right? We can analyze. I can analyze all day. I can put a nice draft together. But when that relies on my job being right, it's a whole different story. So Mayock comes out the booth. He goes there, and he does a great job with the Raiders picking from rounds 3 to 7. It's that first round pick that he was really bad. The pick that knows. And him and Gruden put together some very bad first round. The best thing that came out of the first round was Josh Jacobs. Right? And then what do? You get rid of that duo. You bring in Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, and they proceed to ruin Josh Jacobs. So who comes in and leads your organization is just as important as you have playing for it, because they're the ones laying their foundation of what's coming in. And by chasing off guys that were doing a good job for you and replacing them with guys who, because the coach likes them or the owner likes them or whatever the situation is, if you have productive people on the field, you keep them on the field. If you have productive people in your front office, you keep them in your front office. You do not get rid of them because a head coach doesn't get along with them or because you don't get along with them. You got to find ways to make it work because they're doing something right for the organization. And unfortunately, that kind of politics on the field also plays into the front office as well.
In Mike Mayock's defense, he didn't commit vehicular homicide.
No, but It was the productivity of his first round. Like the overdrafting of Cleveland Ferrell was a huge mistake. The Henry Ruggs deal wasn't even the problem. It was the cornerback that he took, who was with the weapons problems, was the one that you really damn him for, because that was one where the red flags were there before the draft, and he still took it anyway. So there was those were the picks that damned him. You overdrafted a defensive end that never was going to pan out to what he was.
Yeah.
And you took a cornerback in the first round who had a lot of off the field problems that was never going to play a full career. Even when he was on the field, he didn't have any of the success that he had in college. So those are two major busts. You had great picks later on. Max Crosby, great pick later on. Like I said, Jacobs was a hell of a running back that they drafted. And you go down to some of the other later picks that worked out for them. They got a tackle that's played great for them. But unfortunately, Alex Leatherwood was one of those guys who said, don't you draft him in the first round, and he took him, and Alex Leatherwood has been a journeyman ever since. And so those first-round busts can really hurt you, because those are the guys that are supposed to be immediate starters or long-time starters, and if they don't pan out, they're setting you back.
Well, I remember Danny Kanell telling the story about when he got drafted in 2001 by the Giants, and I think he went in at like the 4th round. And then they brought him in, and they said, "Hey, because Kerry Collins was getting old, and they were looking to move on." And they said, "Hey, you're our guy. We're building around you. You're the future." And they built this $30,000 indoor training facility for him in New York, and he just didn't care. He didn't care about playing football. He wanted it. He liked the New York lifestyle. He liked partying, and he never put in the work. And I mean, and that's the hard thing about being a GM is if the guys don't want to put in the work, you can have 7 home run picks that everybody's like, yeah, these are the 7 best picks or the 6 best picks, or your 5 best picks in 2 great trades. You make 2 great trades and you pick the 5 best players, and everybody says these guys are going on to have Hall of Fame careers. And if they don't want to put in the work, that's not the GM's fault.
No, it's your fault.
Yeah, well, the first mistake was they told Danny Kanell that he was the future of the franchise. Even with his play, he wasn't that good. But the second mistake was part of the evaluation process for us is not just to look at the film, but to talk to people and find out what this kid. Not just talk to the kid, because you only get to see the prospect for a certain amount of time, right?
When 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, so when I was going to scout school, they said that one of the main things you're going to have to do is talk to people at the school, right?
Yeah.
And not just the coaches. The coaches sometimes are going to blow smoke up your rear end if they like the kid, right? Every once in a while, you get a coach that's going to tell you right off the bat, why are you even calling? This guy's not worth it, okay? And they'll tell you literally why. But if you're talking to not just them, you're talking to the people in the locker room, the equipment guy that sees everybody every day, that's going to tell you if the guy is a worker or not. Yeah, he's the first person to break out of here. Yeah. So there are people that you can talk to, and they go further back than us. They have people that go back to your high school and Pop Warner days. All right. So if they didn't know that about Danny Kanell, then shame on the New York Giants for not knowing that. But that's happened plenty of times. Okay, when Cleveland took Manziel was one. We could have told you that his off the field antics were going to be a problem. It was a problem. I said that.
Yeah.
I said that last year when I just literally parked in Mobile, was picking up my credential when I got the news about the quarterback from Georgia getting pulled over and getting arrested for public intoxication. Now, he skipped Mobile because he was supposed to be training. Right? That's why he wasn't at the Senior Bowl last year. I'm focusing on training, he said, for the draft. Okay, Stetson Bennett. Okay.
Yeah.
And here he goes. Well, where he's supposed to be, not there because he's not training, he's getting drunk. So when they took him in the 4th round, I still scratched my head why the Rams took him. So what happened midway through the season? Stetson Bennett is leaving the team. He needs to get his life together. So you wasted a 4th round pick on a different player that you could have brought in to help your situation. Instead, now you got a 4th round pick that's not helping you at all. This is why the off the field work matters. You got to go out there and do your due diligence. Everybody did the due diligence on Carter in Philadelphia, and they made him fall all the way down to where Philadelphia can grab him at 9, and he helped Philadelphia get as far as they did. So one guy who everybody had questions about goes in the top 10 and is productive. The other one goes in the 4th round and gives you nothing.
And I think that the Rams took Stetson Bennett in the 4th round as an insurance policy. Honestly, I wasn't mad about that pick because, you still figure you had 2 or 3 years of Matthew Stafford. You let Stetson Bennett grow and learn. I can understand that pick waiting on Bennett. But, and then, of course, it's a lottery, though. It's a spin of the rule. It really, at least.
If I'm the Rams, I could have taken Hendon Hooker if I'm not letting him play this year. Let him heal. He's a lot more talented athletically and overall as a quarterback. And I could worry about him when Matthew Stafford's career is over, as opposed to a guy who's doesn't have the benchmarks, doesn't have the overall arm strength, doesn't have the special talent, just somehow succeeded in college with grit. Nothing wrong with that, but the NFL is a whole other animal. If there were better players that you wanted to have a long-term plan for, I'd have gone with the better player, in my opinion. That to me would have made more sense than the guy that may not want to be there. And that's the problem. He didn't want to be there.
The one that always caught me was Tampa taking Kyle Trask. I was like, all right, then.
Yeah, Trask. See, the problem with Trask, and he's a hard evaluation too, because
Kyle Trask.
Talent-wise, it was there, but he's a quarterback that doesn't fit the current model now, right? The current model is you have to be highly athletic, you have to be able to have escape rushes, do a lot of things, extend plays. It's not really his strongest forte. His forte was going through the system, playing in the system, being able to overpower in short yardage situations because he's a bigger guy, but he's not going to run away from pass rushers. He's not going to be able to overextend plays. The other problem was that when you got him, you weren't exactly doing the best to groom him either, right? You had Tom Brady. You were focused on Tom Brady. When Tom Brady was floated with retirement, then it was like, okay, we got to get him ready. And then Tom Brady came back and it was like, okay, well, let's get ready to win again. And Kyle Trask became the second thought. If they were getting him prepared in those preseason games, he would have been playing with the 1s instead of the 2s and 3s. So you're not getting a guy better preseason if he's out there with the guys that aren't going to make the team, because he's not getting the time to throw the football. He definitely doesn't have the running game to help him out, and he doesn't have the best receivers to get open either. So that's a triple threat bad combination for a guy to succeed, and that's what they did to him. It was get Blaine Gabbert ready. You knew what Blaine Gabbert was. You didn't need to get Blaine Gabbert ready. Blaine Gabbert made his whole career out of being ready to come off the bench. You needed to get Kyle Trask ready, and they didn't do that.
No.
And the thing that I've always thought the draft is a crapshoot, though. And you can be rolling hot all night, but when you hit them 7s, it's game over.
Yes.
And I've always felt that people overvalue the draft because they expect you to be able to go out and draft 4 guys in the first 4 rounds and have all 4 of them be instant impact players. And when they're not, when they need a year or 2 or 3 to develop their NFL game, we don't give guys time. It's what have you done for me next?
But that's a side effect of the money, right? We're paying guys now a lot more. Rookies are coming in with certain deals that they're getting a lot of money, and you got to make a faster decision on them. So everything now revolves around that cap and how much you impact the cap. With the rookies coming in, if they're not productive in those first couple of years, are they likely to stick around? Are they likely to get replaced before then? So, there's very little patience sometimes with a lot of rookies. Some teams are very patient, some teams aren't. Depends on the regime. But you'll find the teams that do the best in the draft, and the teams that usually have the highest rate of retaining players and getting players that contribute, are teams that do the full set of work. Okay, they have a setup. They have a set of a system that allows them to come in and develop the guys that they're drafting. They're drafting guys that are not only talented enough to fit in, but they fit what you want to do. You're putting them in positions to succeed. You're not bringing in a pocket passer when you don't have an offensive line, right? You're bringing in a guy who's mobile, who can protect himself when that line breaks down. So there are teams that do a better job at that, and it makes them a lot more successful in the draft. There are teams that do a very piss-poor job at that, and their drafts show it. And I think that's what you're seeing a lot of is the teams that come in, and maybe they're not a big fan of this draft class. Maybe they don't think very highly of it. So they move around, they trade back. They get more picks. They pick some guys. Those guys aren't as talented as some of the guys they could have had, but they didn't think that highly of them. And they come out of that draft, and the draft is pretty poor for them. There are teams that do that. There are teams that come back the next year with those extra picks, and they load up on guys that are very talented. So it's all about the work you put into it. If you put the work into it and you trust the evaluations of your staff, you're going to come out of there with players that fit. How fast they turn around is up to how well you know that player. Two, how well you know how they utilize that player's skills as fast as possible. So it's all about the plan. The teams that don't plan very well, it shows on the draft. It shows in training camp. It shows during the regular season. It's one of those things that comes around and you can't avoid it. You go, why didn't that work? Well, he was in a bad situation. Why was the situation bad? Because they didn't plan for it. And you can't plan for certain injuries. That part you can't plan. But you can't plan for putting guys in situations where, okay, he's going to be our quarterback, but the offensive line isn't very good and he's not very mobile. Well, in that case, you set him up to fail. We were talking about Kyle Trask. He was set up to fail. He was drafted in the second round. He's the future of the Tampa Bay Bucks when Tom Brady was going. They never treated him like that, So that's why he's in the situation now. You look at him and go, well, he's a waste of a pick. Yeah, because they wasted it. They had plenty of opportunity to get Kyle Trask ready to start, and they chose to go the way of, well, while Tom's out, it's going to be Blaine Gabbert's team. Blaine Gabbert was never meant to be a long-term solution. He's your veteran back. That should not have been the solution. The solution should have been, well, while Brady's not here, get Kyle Trask ready. They never did that. They didn't give him a chance to compete until last year, and it showed.
One other thing that I think is that for a lot of us, with as big as the football media has gotten, we've spent, and especially as the years have gone on, and especially as from 2018 till now, was as big as football media has gotten. With we're spending 10, 12 years with these kids as they're we're watching their high school. We spend 2 or 3 years with them in high school because all the IMG kids are on ESPN every Friday night, and then they graduate from IMG and they go to our favorite colleges, and we spend 4 years watching them in college. And so we spent 6, 8, 10 years with these kids, and we're very familiar with them. And then they get to the NFL, and in 2 years they're gone, and we're like, why? When we fall in love with these kids, like for me, like I'm a huge Michael Barrett stan, right? I'm a huge Roman Wilson stan because I spent the last 4 years with these guys, 6 years in the case of Michael Barrett. When the bad years in 2019, 2020, and now with all the success that we've had with him, and and being realistic and honest in my evaluation, and saying he's a third or a fourth round guy, understanding that, but still wanting him to succeed at the next level because he went to my favorite school. He won us a national title, very instrumental in winning a national title. We get so we spent so long with these guys, and then when they end up in one of our favorite NFL teams and they don't have the success, we want to blame the coach, the GM, the ownership, and just as much as Kyle Trask wasn't handled right by Tampa Bay. How much is that Kyle Trask not being handled right by Tampa Bay, and Kyle Trask not adapting and overcoming his situation? Where he developed, where he doesn't worry about who he's throwing to or what offensive line is running running backs with him. Just doing your job and developing as best you can to be ready, to stay ready, to get ready and stay ready, because that when you get the call, you're gonna have to be ready. And obviously Tampa Bay didn't think he was ready. As much as they didn't get him ready, he didn't help himself get ready. You understand? Because I think that because I understand what you're saying about Tampa Bay mishandling him, but if he was ready, if he had been ready, if he had kept himself ready, if he knew the playbook, if he could if he can make all the calls, if he make all the right reads, he would have been. They wouldn't have gone out and they wouldn't have felt like they needed to go out and get Baker last year. You see, you understand?
Yeah, no, they did the right thing by getting Baker. You needed a veteran to compete with him, but all of that would have been set up when you drafted him, getting him properly prepared. The only way a quarterback gets used to seeing the coverages that he sees at the NFL level, the blitz looks, is the play. And if you're putting him out there with the threes in the preseason, the threes on the other team don't know the playbook either. So they're not doing all the exotic stuff. Everything's very basic. He's out there with guys. If they're not great pass protectors, guess what? He needs pass protection. So it's almost like the quarterback that comes in. He's very athletic. He can run and do all this stuff, but he's not great at reading coverage. Well, do you just throw him out there and have him out there with receivers that aren't exactly great at winning in the route, that with linemen that don't protect very well? He's going to run around and do everything to self-preserve and try to extend plays and not throw on schedule, which means he never gets used to reading his progressions because he's never reading the progressions. So I think we've seen how with certain quarterbacks they've done that. I think it's the hardest. I think the hardest indictment that people have it. They go, well, maybe Kyle Trask wasn't ready. We don't know how much Kyle Trask did on, because they're not going to tell you whether he's doing the work or not on his own. We don't, they NFL teams like to keep a lot in house. So,
True.
But we've seen this kind of thing before, right? So, yes. Especially in times where the coach doesn't want the quarterback that was drafted. Right? You saw it with RG. Right? RG3 got to Washington, and we just saw him arguing with his former coach. And that wasn't even the guy that drafted him. That wasn't even the guy that drafted him, right? That was the guy that came in after the guy that drafted him. But he came in to Washington. The owner wanted him. This guy's exciting. Shanahan was like, yeah, he is exciting. But I could also get the guy from Michigan State who does all the things that I want him to do, and I think we could be successful. So they got both. They got RG3 in the first. They got Kirk Cousins in the third. And RG3 came out his rookie year and did everything that they wanted, right? He came out, he was throwing from the pocket, he was reading blitzes. He did everything they wanted until he got hurt. Kirk Cousins came in and did everything that they wanted still. Okay, he was throwing from the pocket, he was, and they were like, okay, well, we can see, we told you we could win with Kirk. And when RG3 tore up his knee in the playoff game and came back the next year, he knew that what the deal was, that it was Kirk Cousins he had to keep off his back. So he goes out there not healthy, and he's never the same. And by the time you get to the next coach, which was Jay Gruden, he didn't want him either. You know, so he didn't do anything to help him out, and he told him I couldn't coach you. And before you knew it, he was in Cleveland. But then what happens is you see the same thing happen when he gets the kid from Ohio State, Haskins. I didn't want him either. So he didn't do anything to help Dwayne Haskins get ready. So sometimes it is coaching. Sometimes coaches we want what we want, or we don't have time to wait for you to catch up. We do what we got to do to win games right now. So it could be a bit of both. Sometimes the player, Jamarcus Russell, had all the talent in the world, but once he got the money, he didn't care. He didn't care. You know, so there are plenty of guys that get the money and they love what football gives them. They don't love football. And there are guys that love football are going to do all the work and
you got to put in the effort, you know.
Find ways to contribute and improve themselves. Yeah. Sometimes there are guys that just like that. I think Kyle Trask wants to do it. From my evaluation of him, from what I heard of him on campus, he was a hard worker. So I'm pretty sure he's in Tampa working. But he wasn't being groomed to be the starter when he first got here like he thought he was going to be. Because they were Tom Brady's going to win for us now. When he's gone, you'll have your chance. But he needed it from the beginning. You had to start teaching him how, what you need him to learn. Because at the end of the day, he was going to have to play like Tom Brady. He can't play like Baker Mayfield. He is not. His skill set is not Baker Mayfield's skill set.
And with that, gentlemen, we will call it a show. Jeff, before you go, you want to talk about what you do, where they can get you on social media and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I suggest you find me on X, Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but it's X now. Much to the chagrin of the owner of X, I still call it Twitter. My handle is right there on the screen. You can also find me on YouTube on Team MBS Media's YouTube channel. I have Team MBS Draft Central, which is on every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube and social media channels. Now that the NFL season's over, you don't see me as much. I had a show during the season called Bucks Weekly. That will come back again next year.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I was on their Sunday morning shows. So we were doing our NFL previews. So I'm usually around a lot during the football season. I'm a lot harder to find during draft season unless I'm doing appearances like this one.
Yeah.
Well, we will definitely, Jeff, have you back the week after the draft. I can promise you I'll be hitting you up the week after the draft to, go through what you thought, what your grades were and how it played out for everybody. Lou, go ahead and talk about your show.
Okay, it's now called Murder, She Wrote. Sorry.
That was a good TV show back in the day.
Yes, it was.
I did it wrong. Murder, She Wrote by Pat Summerall. There we go. Formerly titled The Enhanced Sports Show. No, it's still called that. It's still called The Enhanced Sports Show. We're on 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time every Saturday, whether it's football season or not. Because we cover everything in the sports world. We'll cover the results of the Daytona 500 this weekend. We'll wrap up the NBA All-Star Weekend as much as we can. We'll do some college basketball since we're now in the final weeks of the regular season. We'll talk some NHL. We'll continue with our NFL divisions. We'll also have our regular features such as the Ridiculous Eye of the Week, Sports Trivia, This Week in Sports History, the Feel Good Story of the Week, and our monthly feature, The Best and Worst of Sports, which happens every month. Of course, we're going to do the Best and Worst of February this month. And, of course, your thoughts and comments are always welcome, and we always welcome new callers. The number is 512-543-4662. I'll repeat it again, 512-543-4662. And remember, that's 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, not Central, not Western, not in Uganda or Bora Bora or wherever. So just keep that in mind, folks.
And with that, I want to say thanks to Jeff for joining us the last 2 weeks. Again, we'll definitely have him come on. The week after the draft, a couple of months from now in April, we'll have him come back on here. Before I go, again, I always want to thank the men and women of our armed services. our first responders. Thank you for doing what you do. We would not be able to do this without you guys doing that. Thanks for everyone that tuned in. Thanks to the networks that allow us to do this every week. And thanks to our sponsors. Until then, guys, I am the Sports Sir Bradley Walker. This has been the Walker Report. Peace.
Got print, send it.
Murder She Wrote. Oh boy, that was